Hype is at an all-time low when it comes to Assetto Corsa Evo. In this video, I'm going to discuss what I believe to be the key things that Kunos needs to address in order to get Cole back inside that hype train. Some of them simple, some of them hard, and hopefully many of them Kunos have already done. Sadly, more people are subscribing than unsubscribing at this point in time. Subscribe to fix that problem right now. Click the like button if you enjoy this type of content, and a huge thank you to all our supporters and channel members. This whole thing is your fault, don't blame me. First of all, and most importantly, I think that Kunos should not do any more early access releases or early access updates until they have something that's a sizable update. Something that looks really impressive, something that genuinely blows people away, something that puts them back on track. If the next update is a drip feed of a very mild improvement, I think the train is going to be further derailed. At the moment, it's got one wheel off the rail, but it's still grinding along. But if the next update is pitiful, that train's going over onto its side. Now, of the most important things to be addressed, and that I think most people would really appreciate, and this is something that's been a huge issue with many modern titles and recent releases, is the underlying performance of the game. Now, in fairness to Kunos, they have built an entirely new graphics engine. It's their own in-house engine. That is a lot of work. That is very hard to get right. And in the best of conditions, if you have a supercomputer, the new engine does have aspects to it that are actually quite impressive. Namely, again, if you've got a supercomputer, the frame timing and some of the aspects of the AA and taking advantage of DLSS and DLAA is actually really quite nice. That, though, is absolutely moot if you can't really take advantage of those things, or you have to have a supercomputer to take advantage of those things, and if you don't have a supercomputer, the game runs like total potato. And unfortunately, with many modern games, especially ones supporting DLSS and FrameGen, not that you'd want to use FrameGen with a racing simulator, but unfortunately it seems like many developers are just leaning on DLSS rather than underlying core optimization or making sure that the engine without those RTX features runs really nicely. The RTX, DLSS and everything should be a bonus, it should be an addition. It shouldn't be the entire framework on which a person is able to then run a video game. And I honestly think the lack of performance when it comes to racing titles is the biggest killer of racing titles. No better example of that would be EA's WRC, where the actual gameplay wasn't that bad. It's very drivable with a gamepad, very drivable with a wheel. Even at launch, the basic gameplay and structure was not terrible. Could have been a lot better, but it wasn't awful. But what destroyed it was the stutter, the engine crashes, and the absolutely abysmal performance. And then, God forbid, you try to play that game in VR. You know, it's just never going to work properly, is it? And the thing is, when it comes to driving simulators, they are sports games, so many of the people playing them are looking to have higher frame rates. They want fast response. That is a large part of the game, is the responsiveness of it. And to be honest, there's also a lot of people in the simulator space that don't have supercomputers. And I don't think you should be expected to have a supercomputer to play a sports game. Not that it's an easy problem for a developer. You know, if you've got rain, if you've got day, night, if you've got all this stuff going on, it's going to be quite heavy, or it's going to be extremely hard to optimize. But the reality is, sports games need to run fast, and they need to run fast on lower end systems, especially to then get the VR performance. To be honest, and I don't think I'm incorrect in this, the vast majority of sim racer fans, racing game fans, would be totally happy if a game came out now that looked exactly the same as Automobilista 2 and was just marginally better in graphics to Automobilista 2. They would really welcome that if it meant that they got 200 FPS on a mid-end graphics card and 200 FPS in VR, they'd be like, this is more than good enough. Look at AC1 vanilla, that looks great. Look at iRacing, it looks dated, but I actually think it's totally workable. I don't mind the graphics in iRacing. Race Room, whole bunch of titles, they passed a level of detail where you're like, this functions great as a simulator, and anything else is icing on the cake. It's a bonus, but a bonus that's not worth it if the cake comes out of the oven raw. Now the second thing, and this will surprise you guys that are fans of this channel, the second thing is the force feedback. I'm sorry, but I don't think Kunos can get away with ACC force feedback with this title. With ACC, I think they got away with it because a lot of people came to that sim afresh. They'd not played the original Assetto Corsa, and they were predominantly GT3 fans, so they had no expectation of decent force feedback when driving a concrete tank with wheels sellotaped to it. With Evo coming out now though, AC1 has actually substantially grown since ACC came out, and especially with the hypercars, sports cars, supercars and road cars, you have a huge user base doing the cruising, playing Assetto Corsa 1, and they, like me when I went from AC1 to ACC, they will notice how god-awful Evo's force feedback is at this point in time in terms of communicating exactly what the car is doing at the limit. And I would argue that for a large number of AC1 players, the force feedback is actually a massive draw to that simulator, and one of the large aspects of what makes it so compelling, addictive and approachable and intuitive to drive. Furthermore, if you have more realistic or more peaky, more abrupt tyre models that are less forgiving than the original Assetto Corsa, you're going to need more detailed force feedback. Otherwise, you could have physics that are absolutely fantastic, but what you'll find is people just be binning it and not being able to preempt the car movements or the grip loss of the vehicle because they won't be able to feel that grip loss or the load that they're putting onto the tyre, so it'll just seem like the physics are turning off, when in reality they might not actually be turning off. They might actually be totally reasonable, but no warning, no feel. You're going to feel like they're turning off regardless of how good they are. Now, I don't think the force feedback actually has to be that good. I don't think it even has to be as good as Automobilista 1, AC1, or even, controversially, iRacing's force feedback with Marvin's awesome iRacing app. I don't really get on with iRacing's physics, they're insane, but that force feedback app gives you the detail to fully understand what's going on with iRacing's weirdo tyres. I don't think it has to be that good. I mean, LMU is only marginally better than ACC in force feedback, and actually worse in some ways. It's just redeemed by the fact that the cars have very controllable slip and are incredibly easy to drive. But most people think LMU's got amazing force feedback. So the benchmark doesn't have to be that high, but I think it does need to be a lot better than what it is now and a lot better than ACC. Putting down my force feedback rants, and another thing that Kunos really need to address is the AI in this. Now, this is certainly not an easy thing to do. Probably as hard as tyre models, graphics engines and everything else to do really good AI. But again, I don't think Kunos need to do the best AI in the world. I think if they can do Automobilista 2 quality AI, Race Room quality AI, R-Factor 2 LMU quality AI, that would be substantially better than what they've got now. I mean, great if they could do iRacing quality AI, top notch, or maybe if they could beat some other games AI. That would be amazing. If they could push the bar forwards on that, fantastic. But as it is right now, it's sometimes worse than AC1's AI. I don't quite get the logic of releasing an early access with stuff in it that's worse than a game, not your previous game, but the game before that over 10 years ago. I don't know how that's meant to build up hype or get people excited for your video game. If I was Kunos, and obviously I'm not because I'm too dumb to make video games of the caliber that Kunos has historically, but if I was Kunos, I would have not put any AI in it so far. I would only show off stuff that was good. There's no advantage to showing off stuff that is awful. And if you are going to show something off that happens to be awful at a point in time, you need to be so incredibly clear that this one thing is awful, and it's awful because of XYZ reason, and we are testing something with this, or we need this awful thing to test this good thing, but it will change. You know, it gets very complicated then. But other than that very unique situation when you're doing something totally new, I just don't understand what they're thinking with Evo and its early access. Now, a further hype coal into the hype train would be if they really sort out the flow and feel of the user interface. I'm a little bit worried that they're kind of set on the UI that they've got now, and that's it. God knows what they were thinking. I mean, it's genuinely worse than ACC's UI. I don't think ACC's UI is the worst UI in the world. It's a bit weird, but makes sense for a gamepad and for a console and cross-platform UI. Also, it makes sense to people that have been playing ACC, your previous players, so it's a bit weird to suddenly spring a new UI on them totally that's not even like the first Assetto Corsa or ACC. Kunos just keep putting random ingredients on their pizza and seeing what tastes good. An anchovy. Ooh, an olive. A Greenland shark eye parasite. Oh. A heavily used traffic cone from Brighton. Huh? But you know what I mean? What on earth are they thinking? And then finally, the biggest hype coal would be the multiplayer, and if they can get something similar to LMU or Gran Turismo's daily racing, which is what supposedly in the next update they're doing the multiplayer first test. And that could be a big thing. I mean, if that comes along with some physics changes, some performance changes, and you can race online and it works, that could be the thing that reinitiates the hype train. But as it is right now, I'm so pessimistic about Evo, and I really don't want to be. I'm a mega Kunos fanboy. What they did with Netcar Pro, Ferrari Virtual Academy, and the original Assetto Corsa was absolutely extraordinary. But I'm just thinking, right, the multiplayer update's going to come out. The servers aren't going to work properly. You're not going to be able to select a car properly. The UI is going to be a pain in the arse. The performance is going to be awful. They're not going to have changed any of the netcode from the original Assetto Corsa at ACC. So the cars are going to be ping-ponging off each other. Something that was fixed in R-Factor 1 and R-Factor 2 and now LMU. So people are just used to decent netcode or expect it. I'm just expecting the worst, you know, and it's not like me to be pessimistic. So, you know, it'd be really interesting to know what you guys think in the comments section. If you got this far in the video, a double teapot will indicate that you did get this far when you commented, so I know you've wasted your time watching the video. What I would find really fascinating is if you can also say if you played the original Assetto Corsa, if you liked that force feedback and then didn't like ACC, and if you expect this to have the force feedback of AC1, because that'd be interesting to know if that is the case, and if my thoughts on people coming from AC that missed ACC out, them wanting that force feedback in this, if that's going to be a big thing. But also just interesting to know what other people are feeling is really lacking and what they feel will be the stuff that actually turns this around. Outside of all of that, in all fairness to Kunos, I think a lot of us are coming to this with the hype of the original Assetto Corsa and even a lot of excitement over ACC. So, you know, the expectations are really high when maybe in many ways, even the early access is now, putting aside some of the technical issues, maybe it's not actually that bad on the grand scheme of things. I mean, you have to be honest, Evo already is way further ahead than Rennsport, for example. It has more features in it. It actually runs faster than Rennsport, maybe not as consistent. The physics are certainly more realistic in many ways, and more realistic than many games that are out there. So, you know, you've got to be fair about these things and say that there is actually quite a lot there that Kunos can work with. It's not a complete damp squib. So, you know, it's easy to be overly critical and overly harsh. And at the end of the day, I think we all want this to bloody be a good game. I think we're all desperate for more actual solid, decent simulators, along with that decent AI single player, something to play through, and some basic matchmaking multiplayer. And ideally, if we can have Project Motor Racing, Rennsport, Evo, LMU, and still have iRacing pottering on the side for when you want to torture yourself with voice chat, the more that are good, the better. So, you know, I want the hype train back on the rails. Anyway, God, I'm wittering so much. I'm sorry this video is so, like, all over the place. But thank you very much for watching it. Presumably you've already drunk your cup of tea. Make another one. But until the next one, take care. Goodbye.